Hello and welcome to Patio Perspectives. This is our monthly webcast podcast for Society for Sustainable Events, where I interview thought leaders from within the industry. I'm your host, Paul Salinger, and I'm really pleased today to talk to two leaders in the event sustainability space, and I will introduce them in a minute. When I went to the VIP behind the scenes tour for Workday Rising last year at Moscone Center, I was really impressed with the work that they were doing. And I've been wanting to talk to Missy Castro and Sarah Jackson for a while now in terms of, because a lot of people didn't get to go to that event. And so I'm not sure everybody knows exactly what they're working on, but they're doing some fantastic work. And so we're going to jump right into this conversation. Missy and Sarah, welcome to Patio Perspectives. I'm going to let you guys just sort of introduce yourselves, and then we'll jump into the conversation. Missy, why don't you go first?
Sounds good. Thank you, Paul. I am Missy Castro. I have been with Workday for a little over 7 years. In my current role for a little over two, I lead experiences at Rising. So we kind of define that as all the things that are outside of the session room, which happens to include sustainability. It includes things like wellness, our volunteering, our social impact, our big party, just really the things that are connecting our attendees to each other, to the community, to the brand. And new this year, we've also introduced what we're calling as customer activations. And so I'm excited to talk a little about that because we actually weaved a customer activation into our sustainability story. So thanks again.
All right. And Sarah, welcome.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm Sarah Jackson. I'm with George P. Johnson. I am a executive producer and most recently adding sustainability lead to my title, as I'll be leading up sustainability for GPJ for the Americas specifically, as well as have a role on the global side really to, drive our business practices forward. But on the EP side, I've also had the privilege of being on the Workday account for almost 10 years now. So it's really been a fun journey to kind of see where it was 10 years ago and see where it is now. And on that Workday account, I really oversee everything, all the nuts and bolts of the program. So certainly sustainability is one of those things. Sustainability has always been a personal passion of mine. And then when I got onto this account, definitely tried to kind of push that forward in the agenda and in the priorities of the things that we do and how we can best support Workday.
Fantastic. And congratulations on your new position. I'm looking forward to seeing what you do with GPJ in that role. So,
Yeah.
I mentioned that we did a behind the scenes tour of Workday Rising last year, and it was great. And you alluded to this, Missy. Your conference is coming up again in a few weeks in a different destination and a different venue. So let's dive into that a little bit. What changes are you making to accommodate that different environment, and what are you excited about this year?
Well, we're in Las Vegas, so definitely a little different climate from that of San Francisco and Moscone. And it's at Mandalay Bay. So one of the first things that we looked at was the fact that Mandalay Bay happens to be a Workday customer, MGM Resorts. So we quickly kind of on the onset of planning thought, how can we weave in kind of this customer story, this partnership into what we do on site at Rising. So last year in San Francisco, for those that went on the tour, we had introduced Eco Park. It was one of the first times that we had kind of brought the sustainability story to the forefront for our attendees. We educated attendees about the carbon offsets that we were doing. It kind of mirrored Muir Woods was kind of the inspiration. So for this year, we've almost doubled the footprint, and we're actually calling it Eco Park featuring MGM Resorts, where we're actually highlighting all the things that MGM is doing in the space of water, energy, and waste, and in addition, engagement, how they partner with others like Workday as a whole for hotels and conventions, and then how we can best tell their story through having kind of these key partnerships. So I think that's one of the things I'm most excited about is that Eco Park is going to be brought back again. It's twice the size. And where last year was Muir Woods, this year we're kind of giving an homage to the Nevada landscape. So it's going to feel kind of deserty, and highlight kind of the magic that they have there in Nevada. Like we have red rocks, and yeah, it'll be neat.
I'm sort of interested, given that you're in Las Vegas and given that there's been some news lately about kind of the heat factor in Las Vegas, is there anything that you guys are taking into consideration around that, around kind of water and heat and how that, either impacts the attendee experience or impacts what you're able to do in that particular venue?
I can answer it, Sarah. Why don't you take it first from the venue side?
Yeah, I can take it from the venue side. When planning an event of this size, we're looking at like a 15,000 plus kind of event. We plan this out years in advance, and we set these contracts up way in advance. And, as a part of our sustainability initiative, we are looking to bring Rising to cities and venues that already operate in a sustainable manner. And really partnering with MGM is one of our key ways of doing that. MGM Mandalay Bay itself has the largest solar array panel on their property there, as well as MGM now also has their solar array that's just outside of town.
Right.
And between all of that energy that they're creating, they estimate about 90% of the day power that's used during, daylight hours is used. They're able to pull from green energy. So that right there in itself is a huge savings, as well as we are very intentional about the space that we use, with over 1 million plus square feet of venue space that we are in. We're very intentional about how we're using the escalators, how we're using the power, how we're using the air conditioning, making sure we're not turning on the air conditioning, maybe in the big massive halls if we're not in there. We certainly need to make sure that our crew and our staff are comfortable, but powering down when and where we can power down, we have found has some really great efficiencies.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I think that's something for, those other folks that are going to places like Las Vegas or places where, heat is a factor. Energy management is a really important aspect of things. And I've been out to that MGM solar array out in the desert, and it's pretty impressive. So I'm glad to see that they're really taking advantage of it and driving a lot of their energy through that solar array.
Yeah, and we really look at it like it is not a coincidence that they have that solar array. Like we intentionally partner with them because they have that solar array.
Yeah. So, I'm sort of interested, I think in the last couple of years, I've certainly seen that, bigger agencies like GPJ or some of the other big agencies that deal with brands on both the B2B and B2C side are really finally starting to take sustainability seriously. I know GPJ has for a number of years already, since we worked with GPJ when I was at Oracle, but for a lot of the big brand agencies, they weren't always taking it so seriously. And it's good to see that they finally are, but I'm sort of interested in talking about the brand and agency relationship, like who actually leads that effort? How do you guys collaborate? Who drives the goal setting and working with the supply chain? Those kind of questions in terms of, just the overall relationship and how that works.
Can we take that one?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I can say from the onset of this role, as Sarah said, she's been on this account for almost 10 years. So I came in a little over 2 years ago, and she happened to share her passion around sustainability, which I had a personal passion for it, but I was very novice in the space of corporate events. And I think we just became sponges of each other and really like leaned on each other of what we wanted to bring to the table. We keep looking for new technology, new ways to bring sustainability in. And I think my biggest thing that I keep saying is like, I don't want to boil the ocean, because I don't want to feel overwhelmed or try to do too much, too quick, too fast. So we are consciously trying to focus, okay, where can we make the biggest impact? Okay, travel emissions. Let's make sure we have budget for carbon offsets. Okay, where's the next place? Okay, it's power and energy. How can we make sure that we're looking at venues and partners that will make sure to help bring those numbers down? Next was our materials, and looking at kind of the reuse, reduce, recycle kind of mentality of what are the booths that we're bringing in. We're not going to go back and burn them after 3 days of a beautiful expo show. we
Right.
need to look at reuse as part of that. I think the other piece is I've really personally, like at work, have built a stronger partnership with our procurement team where they
Mhm.
kind of trust that I'm trying to kind of lead the way in this world. So I've started to add verbiage into our housing contracts, into our venue contracts, into our agency contracts, all around
Right.
sustainability and not being rigid in them. I think that's the one piece I'd love to have folks take away from is I'm not a lawyer. I'm not writing it like with verbiage and eloquence. But I'm just saying the agency will make every effort. The venue will explore all possibilities. So it's a little flexible in that they're just making efforts to make it better. And
Mhm.
that they know that that's important to us. Just on the forefront of us working through. I know like Workday, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, is it 2028? All 70% of our highest venue or vendors by cost have to have science-based targets.
Mhm.
Um, Knowing that, we're already starting to make sure that those vendors are aware of this and that our
Mhm.
vendors are working with vendors that kind of meet those requirements as well.
Right.
I think last is this year alone, we were able to propose a new future strategy. So going into, I think we're like vetting 2029, Sarah?
Yeah.
9, we have equal importance of logistical and sustainable requirements, that we're
Okay.
only vetting venues that meet those baseline requirements of what we need size-wise and what we
Right.
make sure that the communities that we're coming into, the venues, have those baseline needs for us from a
Right.
sustainability lens.
Right. And are you finding at this point that those venues are stepping up to that and are putting those kind of sustainable practices in place in time for you to meet those goals?
I mean, it definitely shortens the list
Yeah.
of what potential venues that we'll go to. So it does put probably a little more pressure on GPJ, but I think I'm hopeful that like, this is in 5 to 10 years, it's just going to be status quo.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, no, I love that approach because, and as you know, you've probably heard me say this, Missy, is like, I think that, it's time for us as event professionals to start rewarding venues and destinations that actually are putting these practices in place with business. And so I applaud that effort. Um, so it sounds like you came into this, Missy, with some sustainable practices already in place, but it sounds like you're driving a lot of it through procurement. So, Sarah, from an agency perspective, where does that, how do you then take those goals and how do you take that vision that's being created by Workday and sort of put it into execution mode?
Yeah, I think when we first began our sustainability journey, it was very focused on the low-hanging fruit, the
Hmm.
low cost, the low resource kind of things. And we were actually really able to make some pretty significant change throughout that. And then when Missy came on, she really up-leveled it and really got the business side of it to buy into it and really kind of
Right,
expand reach and our ability to do more. But I think each year at the end of the program, Missy and I, we sit together and go over kind of the highs and the lows. And Missy's thing that she always shares is like, for next year, the goal is just to do a 10% better, 10% better.
right.
Always just make little steps forward. And I think now we're kind of getting to the point where we can continue to make those little steps, but also start making those steps in a more measurable way.
Hmm.
Now we've got kind of that baseline foundation of data that we can use to help drive us and look at like where we want to focus in on. Is it waste? Is it carbon? Is it transportation? And then we can start to lean in on that. And then we
Right,
kind of work together to look at like what are our current practices and how can we adjust those current practices
right.
to have a better end result
Yeah.
and without compromising, the attendee experience along the way.
Right, right. Yeah. And I think I think that's something again that we've been saying for a long time is like, you have to just start from wherever it makes sense and, continuously improve year over year. And, I feel like you guys have done a great job, made some really big, moves in the last couple of years for sure. Um, is there anything, do you find that uh, do you find that the relationship between the brand and the agency is in kind of constant negotiation around all of this, or you feel like you're really aligned at this point, and that, basically, whatever Workday is basically pushing out and wanting to do, GPJ says, okay, good, let's go do it, and let's work with our supply chain and make sure that we can accomplish these goals.
I think it's actually kind of shifted. I think it was more GPJ pushing for several years, and then Missy came, and now Missy's the one that's pushing us.
Okay.
But pushing us really in the right ways. Like she's, stretching us
Yeah.
to keep doing that 10%, and keeping us motivated to really keep going, and also just to get that story out there as well.
Right. And what do you guys feel like is your engagement with your kind of like whole supply chain? And by that, I mean like the venue and the destination and the waste haulers and, all of your logistics people. Because I know, that was something I was really proud of when we were doing Oracle Open World, was from the very beginning, we really brought our entire supply chain together and kind of set goals with them in conjunction with them. And it got everybody to buy in very early on. And so I'm always curious as to how other companies are dealing with that.
Yeah, I think probably on the vendor side, that's really more of a GPJ thing. And I say it time and time again, like our success and sustainability is so heavily dependent on our vendors and our venues. Like we really cannot do it without them.
Right.
So just like how Missy had talked about in 2027, 2028, Workday is going to start requiring their top vendors to have science-based targets. We've also started to put that practice into place. So we look at our top vendors and we're starting to ask them these same kind of questions. We're starting to bring in sustainability wording into their contracts and make sure that they know upfront what kind of a program, what kind of environment we expect, and ensuring that they are on this journey with us. Because without them, we wouldn't be successful.
Yeah.
As well as, we look out for new vendors that we could partner with.
Sure, of course. And Missy, I mean, you mentioned, kind of getting aligned with and partnering with your procurement department. Is your procurement department looking at this not just from an environmental perspective and a low cost perspective, but are they looking at kind of the social component of as well in terms of like ethical procurement and looking at where they're procuring from? Are they like looking at local vendors as much as like national vendors? Can you just talk about that a little bit?
Yes. And I mean, and I'm no expert in all of the elements, but I know that they're working not only our procurement team that's staffing and my partner, but our product. Like, and I don't want to go into a product story here, but there's a big piece of our procurement tool that is focusing specifically on how to weave in things like this as part of RFPs, as part of building out requirements, and have it be of equal measure of requirements in order to do business with us. But yes, the answer is yes to all of the above. It's about diverse business practices, it's local business practices, it's sustainable, it's the whole bit.
Yeah. Okay, cool. How do you think about and implement continuous improvement, which you've talked about, and incorporating new best practices? You changing venues every year. So are those replicable and shareable throughout the industry so that others can learn from what you guys are doing?
Absolutely. I think one of the best things that we instilled last year, and I hope to continue, is we went for an EIC certification. And that really, it was our checklist, it was our baseline, it's what we knew we needed to do, and it was how we got all the work streams to buy in with us, because it's not just an operations thing. It's not, we needed keynote, we needed broadcast, we needed expo, we needed graphics. Everybody needed to kind of buy in on us getting this certification. And it helped having GPJ kind of at the helm with the list. What are the requirements? And then how can we weave this into the different work streams so that we're all kind of coming towards this common goal? And it became our own goal in and of itself of getting the certification. So now we went from wanting a silver and bronze. We wanted bronze. We got a gold, and now we're trying for a platinum. And part of like the last 8 months of planning into Rising was us saying, we're going for this platinum. Here's how you can help us. And GPJ was fantastic. They created slides for all the different work streams of here are the things that you could do to build into your work stream to ensure and help us get this certification. And then it's, I mean, in some ways, I hate to say it's plug and play because as long as we're following these guidelines,
Right.
we're checking off a list.
Right. Sarah, maybe you could talk a little bit about that in terms of like, I don't know that a lot of people still are really that aware of the EIC standards and what it takes to actually get certified. Can you just talk a little bit about the process that you guys went through to get to that certification and kind of, how you might advise other people if they wanted to get certified on the EIC standards?
Yeah, sure. So the ERC standards are a compilation of about 150 standards. You could look at it as a checklist of 150 things, and they range across, oh gosh, a handful of categories. There's kind of the business management, there's the social side, there's the environmental side, there's climate change, there's water usage, broken up into several categories.
Right.
And it's, I mean, you really could look at it as a to-do list. It's kind of like there's all these standards, you look at them and then you have to say, yes, I'm doing it or no. And if the answer is yes, you have to provide the documentation, some type of evidence to prove that you have successfully completed that particular standard. It's kind of like a grading system. I think it's like if you get a 70% complete, you get the bronze, 80%, then it goes up and up. We ended up with the gold. And then there were a handful of the standards that we looked at and we were like, ooh, this is too much for us this year. We're not going to be able to be successful in it. So we didn't even attempt it. Before we even really started the planning, we did what we called a pre-test and we took all those 150 and we said, oh, easy. Yeah. Check. We got those. Some of them we were like, we're going to give ourselves a 0.5 on that one. And some of them we just said like, this isn't the year for it. We're not going to be able to pull it off. And when we did that, we actually came in at like a low silver and we were like, okay, low silver. So then for sure we should get the bronze. I thought it was a great experience. It does take time. You do have to be able to have a resource there to collect all that information. A lot of it is stuff that you already are doing. You maybe just have to document it. You have to get pictures, you have to come up with a form or something to prove it. But I think even if you're not ready to go through the true certification process of it, just having that list is a great resource. And it's a resource that we look at now, and knowing that there's like these 20 standards out there that we didn't get last year, like those are on our to-do list for this year. Like those are the areas that we really want to focus. We certainly want to continue to do what we were doing, but those 20, that's what we're reaching for. So I think even if you don't do it, it's just a great resource to have of things that you may be like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. Or they could be things that you're like, I didn't realize this had to do with sustainability. Because it's more than just the environmental side.
Right. Is there an example of that particular?
The one that threw me off is there is a requirement that you have to take a course on human trafficking. I just hadn't thought of human trafficking as being something that really impacted the event space. And I brought it up with our team, and our housing team was actually the one that came back and was like, oh, that's a really relevant topic for us here in like the housing department.
Right.
Myself and someone from the housing team that ended up doing that training. It was just an online training. It was like a 1-hour thing.
Yeah.
But I hadn't thought about that. You see it in the airports when you travel, but I just didn't really think about it as something that we should be thinking about and looking for in the event space.
Yeah, I know it is an issue that has come up in the last year or so for sure, maybe even longer. I'm actually hoping to actually have a guest on in Patio Perspectives one of these times to talk about human trafficking. So, no, that was a great kind of summary, because I think that, the nice thing about the EIC standards is because it's kind of a checklist, it kind of fits the event planner model, if you will. And it is scalable so that you don't have to go for platinum right off the bat. You can start and do different levels. I know it when we were doing Oracle, they had not rewritten the standards yet, and they were a lot more complicated. So we never actually, we just decided we didn't want to go through the certification piece of it, but we actually adhered to the standards all along. So there's also that opportunity. You don't have to go through the certification, but if you can at least look at the standards and adhere to, the bulk of what they're trying to do, it'll take you a long way down the path to, running a sustainable event. Okay. So tell us a little bit about what you are measuring and how that data informs your decisions from event to event. You've alluded to this a little bit. What's the key to measuring the right things and then reporting on that data?
You want to take that one, Sarah? I mean, it's the four things.
Yeah. Well, we started off by measuring whatever it was that the venue could give us.
Mhm.
And a lot of that was around waste and energy,
Mhm.
possibly water. So that's really where our measurements started. More recently, just finished our third time around. We've been using Trace, which is a carbon calculator made by Isla. So we've been using Trace, where we're collecting way more data. And that data is really around energy, production, food and beverage, waste management, and also travel and transport.
Right.
So those are our real key focus areas that we get real detailed into with our data collection.
Yeah. And so how are you compiling that data? You're doing it through the Trace tool, I'm assuming.
Yep.
And then are you looking at that data and saying, okay, well, we're at this percentage of waste diversion this year. What do we want to get to next year? I mean, how is that helping you to kind of go through that continuous improvement that we've talked about and set goals for next year and the year after and kind of going forward?
Yeah, this kind of goes back to the conversation where we were a few minutes ago, where we talk about the relationship with the vendors. And really, our vendors are a key part of this. A lot of the data that we need is going to come from our vendors.
Yeah.
So as a part of sourcing our vendors, we do let them know that we are using Trace, and we're going to need their support on it. And we're going to need them to be able to provide X, Y, and Z to us within 30 days post-event or whatever it may be. So we do set them up for success. We have trainings with all of them so that they understand and that they're really on board and want to be a part of this change that we're making.
Right.
So we use that, we plug it all into Trace, and then it calculates our overall carbon footprint. It also calculates the waste. And then we're able to look at that. And now we've got the data for 3 years, so we can see it. Some areas are going down, some areas kind of spiked a little because this year we collected more info than we were able to collect the year before. So the data is still a little bit squishy, but it's getting better. It's getting accurate. And where we're not actually able to collect data, we are putting in estimates of kind of best guess in industry norms. We can at least start to get a better holistic picture of the full pie. And from there, we can look at like, all right, how are we going to bring that waste diversion rate down? Year over year.
And you guys are challenged somewhat in that you're changing venues from year to year.
Exactly.
And so it really is dependent on the infrastructure in that particular destination and that particular venue. I mean, when we were doing Oracle Open World, we had the advantage for a long time of being in Moscone Center for years. And so we could work with one venue and, have everybody work on continuous improvement from that one venue. But changing venues creates a whole set of complexities that doesn't exist when you're just in the same venue every year.
It really does. Yeah.
A piece with that kind of goes back to the procurement piece. That now with my contracts, with my agency contracts and venue contracts, I build in a paragraph that talks about Trace, that talks about like, we're going to need to measure X, Y, and Z. And like to Sarah's point, within 30 or 45 days, as part of the contracting process. So then it isn't a surprise. It is about a partnership, because I think I can say in 22, we didn't track, let's say, the customer appreciation party that we had at Universal Studios. So when we contracted the Chase Center in 23, we made sure, okay, let's document that. This year, we've got Allegiant Stadium, which is a fantastic venue in the vein of sustainability, because they are doing a slew of things to make sure that their venue is ran on renewable energy, that they have waste sorting back of house, that they have all of this infrastructure of what would be our baseline, and it's already part. So it's that procurement. I think so much comes back to that.
Yeah, and I know Allegiant Stadium is part of the Green Sports Alliance, which is, working with a lot of venues that, big conferences might potentially use for things like customer appreciation parties. So, and then, so I know at one point you were kind of compiling a report, at least for an internal, audience. Are you thinking about how you might compile reports that could be shareable out to the outside world?
I think that'll be our 10% for next year, Paul.
Mhm.
Um, I think for the sake of us right now, what's helpful is like having that internal reflection. We do it 60 to 75 days after the event. Sarah
Mhm.
has taken, gotten all of the trace findings. She puts it in beautiful layman's terms that anybody could understand as to what this means. How many cars on the road did we save, or how
Right,
many buckets of
right.
water did we eliminate? We have been I think one thing that's great with Workday and not everybody has is we actually have a chief sustainability officer.
Right.
So having that corporate partnership and buy-in is now starting to help tell our story a little more each year. So the first year we had a blog. The next year we're now part of the Global Impact Report, where we do
Mhm.
have some of the statistics weaved in.
Right.
Now this year, um, I just got tapped this morning from our PR team saying, "Do you have a top 10 list of what you're doing in the vein of sustainability that we can brief the press that are
Right.
coming?"
Right.
So that's new and that's fun. So I think we're on our way to having that beautiful infographic post event that highlights all of the things that we did. And I think it's a good goal for us, Sarah. Here we are saying it is our 10% of getting that story out a little bit more. I mean, we did do a press release with the EIC certification for gold. The PR
Okay.
is aware that we are pushing for platinum. So I think it's just raising the awareness and finding a way to tell the story.
Right.
We did do the conference bag this year. We took all of the 50,000 square feet of fabric from 2023's event, and now we're making the conference bag for 24. So now that's on our website. We made a video. We're telling our attendees or anybody who kind of happens to stumble across the sustainability website as a whole, what
Right.
we're doing in that vein, that it's not just the product, but it's how we operate as a business. And I think the business is seeing that, oh, customers care.
Mhm.
This
Mhm.
is a part of who you are as a brand.
Yeah.
Um, so we're getting
And
there.
and do you feel like your chief sustainability officer is starting to understand, kind of what the event world looks like? Because I know for a lot of companies, their sustainability offices don't often understand really the whole world of events, and so they don't get engaged with, their event teams on really trying to tell that story that you're just talking about.
I would
Absolutely.
say, just looking at some of our other clients that we work with, the Workday sustainability team is far more a part of the event team than maybe some
Mhm.
of our other clients. Um,
Right.
I think your sustainability team has done a great job being part of conversations. Like they're a part of our weekly sustainability event meeting that we have. They're on it. They are very connected, and each year they get more and more connected.
Mhm.
So I think they're real fortunate to have that great connection there.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
can
I'll be excited to see when you guys are actually able to write a report and get it out there.
Oh,
Because I just do think that, the more that all of us can kind of report on what we're doing and help educate the industry and
I
keep advocating for the industry, it just helps everybody.
I totally agree. I totally geek out over post-show sustainability reports. I love them. And Paul, this will be like my little fangirl moment for you. Like I have been reading the Oracle Open World Sustainability Report for like 10 years. And like each year I look forward to it coming out.
Yeah.
But I remember like reading those reports years ago and it really being like the beginning of my sustainability journey and it just really being like an impactful thing. I think they're probably still saved on my iPad because I reference them so much.
Yeah, well, they should still be on the Oracle event page somewhere. And I think Meet Green actually still has them all
Yeah.
because they were the ones who actually, did our auditing and did the verification and helped write the reports for us. So
Yep. I love them.
yeah. Um, there's a, you know, there's a lot that goes into incorporating sustainability at scale at a large conference or really any event. How are you working together to engage all the various stakeholders? We talked about it a little bit, but there's internal stakeholders, there's attendees, there's partners, there's suppliers, there's local services like waste haulers and government agencies and whatnot. And again, given that you're moving venues year to year, talk a little bit more about, just how you really engage all those various stakeholders so that you get everybody on board and everybody's driving towards kind of the same vision and goals that you guys have to be a really sustainable conference.
My goodness. I mean, I can say for this year, our theme is partnerships. I think for not only the program, Forever Forward is our theme of a conference, and part of what makes those partnerships work is it's the people, the platform, and partnerships. So when we think about sustainability, it's getting our CMO to buy in on our future strategy.
Right.
That's part of who we are. It's getting the PR team involved, knowing that we're going for this platinum certification. It's telling the story and getting everyone, it feels good. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's going to tell me, no, I really want single-use plastic this year. Really going to make an impact. I think
Right.
if we can find ways to cost save or find alternative ways to produce the event that's sustainable and it's not impacting the attendee experience, everyone's kind of for it. Like, I don't get a lot of pushback. I
Right.
do think it helps that we have a chief sustainability officer. I do think it helps that I can go to that team when I'm like, okay, what kind of carbon projects should we support now for this year? What are high quality, what aligns to our corporate strategy? Because anytime that I can align and emphasize what we're saying on our website about sustainability, about our product, about our company, about our business, I
Right.
want to make sure I'm complementing it with Workday and who are those partners that are going to help me best bring that to life. I mean, I think Sarah and I have been locked at the hip for 3 years now,
Right.
going through this process and really looking at venues and partnerships that are going to help make it easy on us. Because I can say with Allegiant Stadium, or actually even 2 years ago, Universal, they thought I was crazy when I said I don't want single-use plastic water bottles.
Right.
And now it's common practice for them. They
Right.
thought it was crazy that I said, let's do bubblers with compostable cups. Now it's standard practice. So I think we're leaving little breadcrumbs everywhere we go. So I think that's
Right.
a little perk of being in multiple places or changing venues, is we are leaving little traces of
Right.
changes that we can make that is now becoming practice.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. And um, it sounds like in a lot of ways, you're sort of following the same path that we followed at Oracle, where you're kind of doing this from the bottom up rather than it being mandated from the sustainability office or the CFO or the CEO. And, I think that's a really great lesson for a lot of event teams, is to look at this like, you don't have to wait for management to tell you to go do this. Like, you can really start doing this and work on it from the bottom up and work with your agencies. And, it doesn't have to be driven from the top. It can really be driven from the bottom and work its way to the top.
100%. I can tell you, like, the thing that I'm going to be tasked in the off season of Rising is coming up with sustainability standards
Right.
For all of for our corporate events.
Right.
That's already on the docket because we've been able to kind of show and tell this story and highlight that it's not costing us a whole lot more to
Right.
put this infrastructure in place. Yes, I have the luxury of working with GPJ, who has great expertise, and that I can throw some dollars towards resources that are going to help us with the trace tracking and the reporting and really focusing on what will have the biggest impact. But I feel like even for a small company, I think Sarah talked about this a little, it's finding just like, where can you make the biggest impact? What are the
Right.
5 things that you can do immediately without
Right.
even going to leadership? And then you can start telling that story. And then that's when leadership's going to care. And that's when it's
Right.
standard operating procedure.
Right. So one of the things that I found really impressive when I did the behind the scenes tour of 2023 Workday Rising was that it wasn't just all environmental stuff. Like, you had your wellness area and you had a couple things that were kind of like engaging developers and just doing some things that were not always just environmental, but that still fit into the sustainability story. Can you just talk a little bit about some of those things and how they fit into your overall strategy?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that I've been able to get buy-in on from like the keynote team, the broadcast team, the content team is that by weaving in the wellness, our attendees are going to actually have a better, more engaged experience, because if we
Right.
can balance and encourage sleep, water, connections, they're going to be more connected to the program and have better retention of the content. So
Mhm.
this year it's fun. We have at Mandalay Bay, a lot of our sessions are on the north floor, which is the ground level,
Mhm.
and there's a patio that opens out to the pool. So
Right.
instead of having a wellness room, like we did last year at Moscone, inside 4 walls, no windows, we created a wellness patio where we're
Right.
actually going to encourage people to take a step outside, get 10 minutes of fresh air, sunshine, have some cool water. And kind of going back to the heat part, we have cold towels ready to be on the ready, ice bucket, because we don't know what kind of weather we're going to get in 6.
Right.
Um, but educating our attendees around the importance of building those connections and fostering the community, that they may leave with a friend or leave with a buddy or have somebody that they can go to the party with. That's a human connection, and that's going to make that experience better. And they're going to have somebody to sit next to in the keynote. We weaved in a lot of the things that a lot of other conferences do, like the fun run and the walks, but we're
Right.
educating them as to why this matters, why
Right.
going to make your experience better. And you don't need to feel like you need to have 8 sessions a day sitting in a room all day long. Like, balance it a little bit. Weave in some of these other things, because a lot of our sessions are now on video on demand too. So we
Right.
don't want people to feel over scheduled. We want it
Right.
to be balanced. So it's great because we're now getting to weave this into our comms, to our marketing, and how they show up and build their agenda.
And is that also extending to the way that you're looking at food and beverage in terms of trying to give people kind of like healthier food so that they again have a bit more brain power, especially later in the day as they get past the lunch hour when they're not necessarily eating such a heavy meal. Maybe they've had a nice vegetarian salad or a nice vegan meal of some kind. Is there a food and beverage strategy that fits into that kind of social piece, if you will?
If I had a nickel for every time I said brain food in my food and beverage meeting,
Yes,
I would be a wealthy woman.
I
Yeah.
would be retired. Yes.
Absolutely, Paul. Like, I definitely, brain foods are top of mind to me. Obviously, from a diversity or an inclusion standpoint, we do the top 10 allergens, and to make
Right.
sure that that's accounted for. We do the survey on the onset to make sure we have all of the dietary things. We took red meat off the menu 2 years ago. Don't tell anybody, but nobody has really even realized that we've done that in just terms of a sustainability lens. We want to give healthy options. We want to
Right.
be more plant forward. We still have proteins. Don't worry. We still have
Sure.
animal proteins, but it's how we're serving it and how we're providing it. We've eliminated hot buffets, just showing at the food waste alone and choice. Things are more grab and go.
Mhm.
Folks don't want to have to stand in necessarily in the big halls through a long line and then go and
Mhm.
some want to go outside, some want to bring it to a session, some want to take it out, to the patio. Um, we're absolutely looking at how can we make sure that their wellness is
Mhm.
incorporated into the food and beverage. And of course, we'll still do a sweet treat in the afternoon.
Of
We're not
course.
eliminating all the good stuff. Some folks need that Diet Coke or that coffee at the end of the day, but we're just making sure that it's front loaded. I don't know, 80% is healthy.
Yep.
So their brain can work, their body can work, they can feel good and not sluggish at the end.
Well,
Anything to add to that,
it,
Sarah?
it, it was actually one of our tenets for a lot, for a good part of the time that I was doing sustainability at Oracle was like we had, trying to be carbon neutral, trying to be waste, zero waste, trying to measure things. And then it was like, have fun. I think a lot of times we, forget sort of the fun factor that we can bring into the equation when it comes to sustainability. And it sounds like, between your wellness stuff and some of the things that you've just talked about, that fun component, to your point, really does add to the attendee experience.
100%. And it is one of Workday's core values. So
Hmm.
it definitely leads with what we do. If it's
Yeah.
not fun, was it even worth doing?
Yeah.
Maybe not.
And I think it's the education piece too, that like we're doing these things in the background, but we're also educating attendees why we've made these menu choices. I mean, don't
Right.
put me on the stats, Sarah, but we saved what? We could fill Fisherman's Wharf 3 times with the amount of water we save by some of our menu choices. So
Right.
it
Mhm.
makes the food taste better. I swear, when you know those fun facts, or that we sourced it locally, or that it's organic, or the
Yeah.
things that
Mhm.
makes it taste better.
Yeah, exactly. So one area that, is always a component of large conferences that we haven't really talked about that I just kind of wanted to get some of your insights around is the exhibition hall. Um, the exhibition hall has traditionally been probably the most problematic of the areas for a big conference, between transportation of materials in, the setup of booths, the waste that gets created from things wrapped in plastic or whatever else. How are you guys dealing with all of that? Are you putting any kind of like requirements or mandates in place for your partners that are exhibiting, or just what is your overall strategy around the exhibit hall?
Yeah, from a partner perspective, we have about 170 partners there on site each year, and it begins with education on their side. They certainly are a large footprint of the
Mhm.
overall expo hall. So we do have what we call like our sponsorship pledge, our partner pledge, and it's a pledge of, some sustainability best practices. And each year we have more and more partners who are agreeing to pledge to more and more things. A lot of it is around waste. We do know that, partners can bring in a lot of boxes and wraps and little tchotchkes that are shipped from around the world. But we're really just not seeing it as much anymore. We encourage them to not bring it. No more printed collaterals, no more
Right.
little handouts that, provide 5 seconds of enjoyment and then they get left in the hotel room, or they just get thrown in the trash, or they're left on the booth counter or whatever. They
Right.
never really make it anywhere. So we're seeing less and less of that, but yet we're seeing more and more increased satisfaction results from our partners. We're seeing more engagement, more real conversations happening out there. And then as far as the rest of the expo hall, it's really Workday's footprint. And Workday has really gone from, I think, a few years ago in the industry, it was, we have to build it new every year.
Mhm. Yeah.
You can't wear the same dress, more than once. Like you can't do that. But now you can.
Yeah.
And not only can you, but let's promote it and let's talk about like, hey, you may have seen this before, like we're proud that we built something, built
Right.
it with quality, and that we're bringing it back. We freshen it up and zhuzh it up a little bit, but we're really starting to design with circularity in mind.
Yeah.
We no more build and burn. We really are using things and reusing things, and not only just reusing them within Rising, but reusing it within the larger Workday event portfolio. Sometimes we'll get pieces from another event, sometimes Rising event pieces will go elsewhere. So I think that's also been a huge help, as well as kind of smaller changes, just like not that long ago, like we would carpet the entire expo floor,
Right.
corner to corner. Everything was carpeted. And we've done away with aisle carpeting.
Hmm.
It seems so little, but it adds up to so much.
Absolutely.
We did a presentation last year at EMS, and we calculated the aisle carpet that was saved over the last probably 2 years of not using aisle carpet. And we were able to estimate we had enough aisle carpet to roll from Mandalay Bay all the way to Caesar's Palace, where we were doing the presentation. And just the thought that, you could roll that much carpet out there, and essentially that all would have gone into the landfill because our carpets are curved. We've got, special little zigs and zags, and that's the
Right.
carpet that we can't reuse. So
Right.
where we are carpeting, we really try and keep our lines straight. Workday loves curves. But when it comes to carpet, we really try and minimize that so that
Right.
we can reuse that carpet.
Right.
I
Do
think
you, yeah. No, go ahead, Missy.
I just to add to that with the expo, there's something that GPJ has really helped with by having the sustainability lead is post-show donations.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
we donated over 3,000 items last year from Moscone
Yeah.
that would have gone to landfill.
Right.
Having somebody who's documenting how many yoga mats are we buying, how many
Right.
benches that don't have a home that we can
Mhm.
for local schools and local nonprofits,
Right.
Liquid Donate was such a great partner that we had last year. And already, we found partners through the venue at Mandalay Bay that already have earmarked a lot of the things that we're bringing into the expo. So they have a home after.
So just to come back to kind of the measurement piece and what we're talking about here, do you feel like at some point we all will start to measure that reusable piece or repairable piece or donation piece as a piece of all this measurement? We tend to focus on things like, carbon reduction or waste reduction, but we're not necessarily accounting for, we actually saved, X number of pieces of, materials, and it went back into, a different life cycle and is going to get reused in some way. Is there some way for us to measure and account for that?
That's a great
I
idea.
love that. Yeah, we're not capturing that, but we're going to put it on our list. Yeah.
There you go.
I like that. I mean, because that's almost like reverse engineering what we're
Right.
tracking, right? Let's track the positive and what
Yeah.
it is that we are able to reuse.
Because when you start to talk about circularity, I mean, I think that's the piece that we're all sort of missing at this point is, we're so focused on waste aversion and carbon reduction, but when we're really talking about circularity, it's that whole life cycle and getting out of the, take, make, waste mentality and reusing things and having a completed life cycle and kind of that cradle to grave mentality. And if we can measure that in some way, it might get us to start to think differently about materials and about, food and beverage and donations and all kinds of things, and be able to kind of show that, we're not just taking and making and wasting, we're actually like contributing to an ongoing, circular economy.
I love it. I love it.
Okay. Well, I don't think I have any other questions. I just want to say thank you so much for your leadership and what you guys are doing with Workday. I guess one last question. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but is there just like a couple of like really what you guys would consider innovative and new ideas that you're bringing into Workday Rising this time that you're really excited about?
I'm excited for our AI waste sorter.
That's what I was thinking too.
Okay.
That's gonna be fun. Just from a personal standpoint, I never know what bin to put things in. You would think I would know working in this space. Is this compostable? Is this recyclable? I don't know. So I'm excited to see how this goes. We have 3 AI waste sorter bots as part of our meals plan. So when you walk with your plate, your fork, your cup, you show it and it tells you what bin to put it in.
Nice.
A little bit of education. It's a little bit of an experience as you go through. I'm excited to see how the conference bags land, knowing that every bag is unique, all made out of our conference fabric from last year. I think that's going to be really fun to see. What else, Sarah? I know that we've done some other things, but not.
The one I'm excited about is the Oscar, the waste AI sorting. It cost us a couple dollars on the front end, but we're also saving some dollars on the back end with a reduction of back of house sorters that we would have needed. And Oscar's also going to be like our biggest advocate and help with us reaching a zero waste event as well. So excited to see how successful that is.
Yeah, great. And I know that you, again, are doing a little bit of a behind the scenes tour in conjunction with SEMA this year. So I'll be out of the country at the time, but I'm excited to hear how that goes. And hopefully you can get, a whole new audience excited about what you're working on from a sustainability standpoint. So again, thank you both so much for doing this. And again, thanks for your leadership and good luck and congratulations on your conference. And we'll look forward to seeing what the results are from this year.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay.
Thanks, Paul.
All right. And thank you to our audience. Again, this is our monthly webcast podcast that we do where I interview thought leaders like Missy and Sarah. So please stay tuned for a link to the recording. You'll find it on YouTube every month. And we'll see you all next time. Thanks very much. Take care. Okay.